Welcome to today's class on SQL and Python. We will discuss more about how to use Python to run some SQL queries and do some little manipulation. But first of all, for today's class, I would like to discuss a little bit about the materials I've uploaded on Moodle. I've basically provided a link for you to see how to install Python on your machine. You can click on that. You can install Python if you're using Linux or Mac or Windows. Basically, whatever you're using, you can use this as a link to download Python and install on your personal computer or laptop. And also, there is little tutorials on SQLite and Python, and also a little documentation about the SQLite Python interface. You can look at that. For this course, I will use the PyCharm IDE for displaying what we will do. But basically, you can use any tests editor like if notepad for example to run this, and you can run basically from command line. I will show you that as we start the course, and then maybe after this video I'll be able to upload maybe a list of IDEs you can use, at least when you're away from the university. If you're at home, you can use that. I'll do that maybe at the end of this video, and I'll upload it into Moodle. So for today's lecture, basically, we will look at some basics and have some exercise, of course, on how to use Python and SQL, and we will be using the SQLite as we've used basically in the beginning of this course until now. And the SQLite and Python, basically for SQLite, Python provides two interfaces, and that's the PySQLite, which is basically an API for SQLite database. So if you are developing an application that needs support for, let's say, Oracle, Postgres SQL or MySQL, then this would be the right API to use. Another thing is if, for example, what you're doing is just applications that are basically using just SQLite database, then the APSW will be the right choice to use, because that is just basically an SQL, a Python SQLite wrapper that you can use to develop your application. And before we go into creating database, I just want to explain what I'll be using and maybe show you some little things. First, as I said earlier, we will use this PyCharm IDE for this course, because I don't want to go to a command line then come back here, command line and all that. So this way I can run the query, and basically you can see the output straight away. Um, but I want to show you that even with a notepad, let's do that with a notepad, with a simple notepad, you can actually run. Let's keep this aside. You can actually run any SQLite and Python query, just very basic. Let's try to do something like let's say connect like let's test a connection to database, for example. We can do that, and you can see. Let's see this. So already I have the database. Let's put this as connection successful. So this is just a simple code that basically imports the SQLite library, and then we connect to a database called SQLite DB. And if the connection is successful, basically it prints out this uh, uh, to the result page. So let's save as, for example, testing.py meaning it's a Python file. We'll save it here, and now let's try to run that from the command line. Let's see. So let's basically try to open command prompt. I think yeah, SQLite, and then we save that as testing.py. Okay, testing.py. So If we run that now, you can see it basically shows us that connection is successful, so we can connect to that database. So this is just to show you that even with a notepad, you can still basically run your Python queries using with SQL involved, and it will run successfully. So you don't have to worry. But when you have some sophisticated code you're writing, you need an IDE to assist you, because that way it makes it easier for you to organize stuff easily, and for error handling and all this stuff. So maybe that way you can use some of these IDs, and to make your life easy also, of course, IDs are helpful, but it's important for you to also understand basically how to run some of the stuff with a basic tool like even Sublime Test or a Notepad, for example. Now, let's talk about creating a database. How do we create a database using Python? So basically, for you to create a database, what we do is first of all to define a basic function, and the function basically, excuse me, the function basically connects to SQLite database, and as we've sorry about that, my cough is really disturbing me. So basically, we define a basic function, and we use that function basically to connect to the SQLite. And if for any reason there's an error, we throw the exception here to print the error, whatever error occurs. Maybe if there's a problem with creating the database, or if there's any issue, and we close the connection. And here we just basically specified the location of where we want the SQLite database to be created. So this is just a part for me. Z, you yours can be C, D, or E drive, whatever drive you have, and you specify the file path for you to create your database. So that is an example, and I can show you that from PyCharm. Let's say let's try to create a database called, let's see, create DB. Now let's create a database called tester, for example, tester.db. So if I should run this file, basically what it does is to create your database, and you can simply look at that by another thing. There's also a UI tool you can use. Basically, I think yeah. So you can use this DB browser also to browse database. Let's say if I want to, now we've created a new database, right? Let's say if I want to open that, you can also use this UI tool if you want. This is basically for your own personal use when you're not in the university. So we created stuff. What was the name? What did we create, just to be sure? I think it was tester. So tester DB. So there should be a database called tester. If we go there, so tester, you see that's the database is already there. So we can open the database and we can see that it's basically empty. And now let's try to create some tables. So let's create, oh okay, connecting to database. I think I've already explained that to you before. Basically you connect to the specific database, and then you print out the statement. This is basically using the PyCharm, and this is if you use the command prompt. So both are the same, so you don't have to worry about that. So I'll move to the next part, which is creating a table. So here we try to create a table. We connect to database, and then we print out a statement that shows that the connection was successful, and we try to execute this create table statement. And to do that, now we have this test.db. I'm gonna take that, let's say create table. I'm gonna change this class db here, database here, to tester. So we have that, and then all we just have to do is to run it here, and you can see that the connection to database is successful. The table has been created successfully, and we can actually refresh this. Let's see, let's go back to this test and open again. You can see now that the table company is successfully created. So if you see here, we said we wanted to create a table company. You can see the table schema, so that has been successfully created. So this is just using the DB browser to see what we've done. And To insert, we use this statement also to insert, and all we execute here is basically an insert statement to insert into the company ID, name, age, address, some basic attributes, and then the values of each of those for the table. And that you can easily do by using this. And I will just change this here to test the DB. So let's run this. So you can see the insertion is okay. And if we should sorry about that. So if we should browse data from this table, so here, so now this is the company table. Now let's browse data from this table. We can see that all the inserted values are there in each of the columns and rows. So that is that for inserting. um, Now let's say for a reason we intend to also do some selection. We can select um, we can select basically, okay, anyway, let me explain here. Basically, you can select information from the database, and all you need to do, of course, is to have the connection to the database. And then well, this is optional. This is just to show or to check if the connection was successful. We want something to be printed out. That's the essence of the print statement. And now using the cursor, what we do here, what we execute here is basically to select the ID, name, address, salary from the company table, and we use a for loop here to select all the rows in the database, all the rows in the table, and to print that out. And as you can see here, that comes in here showing the ID, ID1, ID2, ID3, and ID4. These are the four rows that are there, and it shows you that this is done successfully. You can see that from here. Actually, all this information are also in this same database, but just for the sake of this presentation, I will just use the same database we used. Let's run the select statement. So we can see now that basically all these are selected. You can see the output is here showing what we've selected. But it's important also to note, especially for those of you that are new to Python, that Python is also like indent sensitive. What I mean by that is, for example, if you should do this, if you run this, let's try to run that. You'll see the error. There should be an error usually. Yeah, you can see now that it shows you that there is an indentation error. So an indent is expected in the block. So what it means is basically for us to do that. So that is something you should note. I can't remember all the basic error in my head now, but that's something that came to my head while I was working. So please read the material I uploaded in the module and go through them. So there might be basic thing. As you also use them, you realize some of the basic errors, like maybe the braces, the semicolon. There will be some basic error you encounter along the way. If we should run these now, you see that it should run successfully. Yeah, so as you can see, so this is something you should also have. At least you should note this down. And the next thing here is I think an update operation. And just the same thing as the select. The difference this time around is that instead of selecting, what we are doing is updating. And let's say we update the salary to 4,000. So we can execute that. You can use the same database, and if you should run the update, and you can actually choose from here what you want to do. So if you want, you can also choose from here, and you can just right click and basically just run the update here, and it runs. So you can see that what we've done is that we update company table. We set the salary to 4,000 for the stuff that has ID1. And as you can see here, ID1 basically it shows that the staff now has a salary of 4,000. This is an update statement. And the same with the delete statement. uh, you can see that for the delete statement, what we've done is basically to delete from company where the ID is 2. We can do that simply by, let's say we We put this to oh, sorry, we put the test DB that we are using. We try to run the delete file. It does the same. You can run this also from command line. It's something you can run from command line. You can see this now. You can see that we've deleted ID2. We can even delete where ID is equals, for example, 3. And if you want, we can run that. I think it's here. We can run that. So you can see basically it has shown us the number of rows that was deleted, and the output is here. So these are things just for you to see the basics, and to understand how Python and SQLite can be used. So this is basically a foundation for you to work on. The exercises will also make you understand better when you play around these things, and try to do some few things. Try to read everything I've uploaded on the model page, and try to play around with them. You will make some mistakes, there will be some errors. Just try to understand the basics, and probably by next week I'll also give you a little more on the SQL and Python. So thank you.